Hey, everybody. We are just starting now um, with the panel. And I guess we start recording from the beginning, but I'll tell people who are watching this later, we will begin the actual thing in about a minute. Want to give people a chance to show up. Um, yeah. And let me get my slides up in a minute. Or now. Maybe I'll just get my slide up now. It's funny, I have so many tabs of Instagram videos from folks here. And this format is not really one where I can share video very successfully. So for folks who are joining us, see folks coming in now. For folks who are joining us, we're going to be uploading. I'm going to upload a PowerPoint that'll link to videos so you can watch stuff on your own after the fact if you're not familiar with the amazing work that folks here have already been doing, rather than watching them during the talk, just because that gets all connection-y and buggy and stuff like that. So, and we are going to roll out in literally 1 minute. I'm going to get us ready with my slides. Everybody looking at my slides, nice and big? Nope, because they're back in here and I have to add them to the stage. Here we go. It's slides. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming to our panel today. How Zohran Mamdani for mayor won the internet and the heart of New York City. You guys probably know that Zohran Mamdani defeated Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, even if Cuomo doesn't seem to be aware. And now you can hear from online to offline campaigns, viral sensations, social media experts, and the folks who really, I'm sorry for moving my camera here. I'm actually gonna no, there we go. I still sound okay, everyone? Okay, great. We're going to hear from some of the folks who worked on this, everything from social media strategy to some creative events that were kind of designed for social media virality. I'm really excited to get to introduce everyone to my panelists today. So joining me are, I'll get you through here. Oh yeah, it's me. Haha. Ilana Levin, they, them. I'm program director of New Media Mentors, and I also help with the training program at Netroots Nation. I teach digital strategy to labor unions, nonprofits, and my own background is very much working in the labor movement. However, before I got my start working in digital for labor, I worked on anti-corruption, anti-establishment Democratic primary campaigns in New York City, way back during the Friendster era. So witnessing this amazing moment in New York victory feels like it's been coming literally my entire adult life. And my own participation in this campaign was doing social media for Jews for racial and economic justice, which was, I think, the first organization to do a ranked choice endorsement strategy, a slate endorsement strategy announcement for this election. I teach digital strategy to nonprofits year round, as I mentioned, and joined by Kate Camellia. Kate is a Brooklyn-based designer, producer, and the founder of Hot Girls for Zohran. Alongside her co-founder, Kaif Gilani, built HG4Z into a grassroots organization of over 400 internal volunteers. Since the beginning of the primary campaign, they have mobilized hundreds of volunteers to 40 canvases all across New York City, developed a social media strategy that has resulted in millions of impressions, collaborated with influencers like Emily Ratajkowski and Hassan Piker, and produced events such as the Zohran Mamdani Lookalike Competition and Ranked Choice Comedy Show. Hot Girls for Zohran has been all over the media. I'm sure you've seen them. Really happy to learn more from them. Carla Marie Davis, hello, is a political content creator born and raised in Brooklyn. After working in as a fashion design for a number of years, she made a pivot to the political space, fueled by a deep interest in and commitment to social justice and equity. Having worked on local campaigns and at a political consulting firm, she gained intimate insight into the power of politics at the local level. Carla now creates social media content that focuses specifically on city and state politics. She aims to erode the gap between New Yorkers and their local government using digestible and engaging videos to discuss everything from elections to legislation. And we'll be looking at some of those. Although I can't, unfortunately, play you guys the Tribe Called Quest intro to her interview with Zohran that I appreciated greatly as a Generation X person. I'm joined by Donald Borenstein, they, them, he's director, cinematographer, and producer, part of Zohran's digital video team, filming and editing the majority of the direct-to-camera videos that became a signature hallmark of the campaign. Donald worked with the final leg of Congressman Jamal Bowman's 2024 congressional and on digital media initiatives through DSA, you may have heard of them, and the Public Power in New York, among others. And of course, Donald's background is in documentary video, was working on a project actually up the original Buffalo chapter of Starbucks Workers United. And finally, Lawrence Wang, he is co-founder and creative director of Green Pill, a communications cooperative built to help the left seize narrative to reign and win. And I met him as the leader of the Don't Rank Evil Andrew for Mayor PAC, back when it stood for Don't Rank Eric or Andrew for Mayor PAC, because Eric Adams was still running in the primary at that point. Green Pill has worked on replacing a 30-year incumbent with the first socialist in the Hudson Valley, working on statewide legislation. And honestly, like, before anybody else was really doing strategic digital work on social media against Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams in the primary, Dream was out there and really was a rallying place for anybody who knew that these mofos had to lose, but didn't know necessarily which candidate we wanted to be voting for yet. So with that, if folks haven't seen the Dream Insta, that have a wonderful account. I was scrolling down to see some of the earlier pieces. I know that I got that very same T-shirt we have, the Don't Rank Cuomo New York City. This if you live in New York, like, this is what our Department of Waste T-shirts logo looks like. So you were operating on multiple levels. And something you said to me was that you guys ended up kind of running a T-shirts first campaign. Tell me about that, Lawrence.
Yes, and thanks again, Alana, for having me, and hello, everybody on the stream. So one of the things that we wanted to do with this campaign was we didn't want to run a traditional super PAC kind of operation, right? The traditional one is we run it the last 2 weeks of the campaign. Whatever money you raise, put into TV ads and radio ads. We didn't we didn't have that money. Just straight up, we did not have that money. And two, we didn't think it would work. I think we knew that our opponents would have way more money than we had, and end up being they had 320 to 1 ratio of money in their favor. So the only way for us to break in was to actually reach New Yorkers where they're at. And for anyone who's been in New York, you know that fashion plays a huge role in New York. Everyone cares about it. Everyone wears it. Everyone wears their stuff with pride. So the way to reach people was not to try to hit them with a bunch of ads, but actually to turn people's bodies into ads by getting them excited about wearing merch about attacking Cuomo. And we saw how people got energized by that, how we actually got so many messages from people who bought our merch saying, I can tell you how many people reached out to me on the train or on the street because they saw this Don't Rate Cuomo message designed into kind of, again, iconic iconography of the city, which is also another part of our strategy. Was we wanted to make it look like the city itself was fighting against Cuomo and Eric Adams, which is why we designed things that felt in the vein of like our dot thing, also our subway, the MTA logo. So that was why we ran with T-shirts, and we know it worked, and we know we made it because we saw bootleg Dream merch out in Chinatown and actually Coney Island too, which is that if you're from New York, that's the real sign of you're successful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm always saying in my trainings to folks, the standard like red, white, and blue America thing, it doesn't reach people who are not already hyper engaged in politics with like a rah-rah patriotism theme. We know this because if it was effective at reaching those people would already be voting for us, but they're not. So you guys were embracing, and this is true for every single person on this panel, a more culturally specific and culturally literate and culturally sensitive, and not the generic red, white, blue eagle like aesthetic. And that told people that we were for them and not just the usual, thing. Um, and you also worked with a lot of volunteer content creators. What was that process like?
Uh, I wish I could tell you that it was this seamless, interesting, super organized, very easy to plug and play kind of method. Really, it was just standard organizing of a lot of one-to-one conversations, talking with people like Carla Marie, who we worked with together on many, many videos before for a variety of different efforts, and just reach out and saying, "Hey, would you like to be involved with this thing?" And then once you get the ask going into, great. Could you also reach out to other people you might know who might be interested? And then from there, once you start creating content, getting or seeing other people engaging with content that we are aligned with, then reaching out to those people, going, "Hey, would you be interested also doing work with us there?" So that was kind of like how we got into people's DMs. So a lot of people in DMs there, and then doing all one-to-one conversations. That's actually how we got our. Besides Carla, we also had Cassie Wilson, who did the first content creator video with Zohran. When we saw that, we said, "Great, let's talk to you as well," and then reach out to their friends and their own network, and then just reach out to more and more people, and just really just have like a lot of signal chats, connecting people in different ways to manage that. We had eventually had a spreadsheet where we tried to list everything together. I don't think it's anything super uh, super like innovative. Just really just sort of standard digital organizing.
Carla, I one of the things I really thought was interesting was you did a really amazing job of explaining complicated electoral things, like the fact that New Yorkers didn't understand what ranked choice voting was central to Eric Adams winning in the first place. And you really set out to educate voters about this complicated thing. And you were doing it to, well, tell us a little bit about the audience that you reach with your content and how you developed that audience.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be part of this panel. Um, so my content is focused around engaging young New Yorkers and bringing them further into the process and kind of drawing those direct connections between the things that we experience living in and navigating around the city and the decisions made by our leaders in City Hall in Albany. And each year since I've started doing this social media work, I've covered local and state politics or local and state elections as part of this broader effort to get more people to tap in and be engaged at the local level of government. I actually began this journey in 2021, so the last citywide election cycle, when I noticed that there was a significant drop off in engagement from all the energy and activism that we saw in 2020. And I think it became clear to me that there was such a gap in terms of accessible and digestible information about local politics. And so I was like, I want to be part of filling that gap and drawing those connections for folks and getting people to realize just how much power exists at the local level and how those decisions impact us and impact our daily lives in a really immediate and direct way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I work a lot with nonprofit organizations, and you're an individual doing this as an influencer, as yourself. And I find consistently, not every, because I think Jayfridge is actually really good at this, despite our not having that many staff. But like consistently, nonprofits struggle to get the amount of eyeballs on their content, their educational content, that I see folks like you able to get when your own work. Do you feel like being an independent influencer doing your own thing as a face to the camera makes the difference, or like what is the strategic difference between how you're doing it and what you kind of see from the nonprofit space, with an eye for the fact that there's nonprofit folks here who want to learn from you? We want to like be like you.
Yeah, I think it's honestly just a lot of trial and error. I think not being afraid to experiment and be playful with the types of content and kind of evaluating after you create and see what works, what doesn't. I think also just different audiences are going to gravitate towards different people, and you don't need to be everything for everyone, but kind of building an audience that authentically gravitates towards you. And then in terms of like specific content that I found to be effective, I think the sweet spot is creating content that exists at the intersection of being informative, but also fun and engaging and has personality to it. And ultimately, I think that people really, there's a the really strong appetite for political content that is accessible to people regardless of what level of, political education they might have. And so being able to deliver and like translate complicated things and translate it in a way that anyone can engage with it regardless of their educational background, I think is really the key.
I mean, I love the series that you did with Dream, where you were like, spend a day with me being an Andrew Cuomo hater. And you also were like kind of doing Andrew Cuomo thing, like sort of, sorry, illustrating for us the kind of assholism in your, like you're cutting in line while telling people how Cuomo held up vaccinations because of his dick waving contest with Blasio. So like you were literally performing a metaphor for people, and it was a lot of humor and it was working at different levels. It's the kind of thing that I was like, this could so easily go wrong, but you nailed it, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, that was such a fun one to make. That was the first Dream collab that I did this cycle. And as I was coming up with the concept and the video treatment, I was thinking about how we can deliver this information about Cuomo and his record, but in a non-traditional format so that we have the opportunity to reach and engage folks outside of the political sphere. And how can I take a style of video that we know people enjoy consuming on social media and that performs well on social media and adopting it for this purpose? And the idea of spend a day with me came to mind, where we'll have folks come along as I navigate, a typical day in the city while also sharing facts about Cuomo's record. So, the Dream team, Lawrence and I, we collaborated on fleshing out the script and picking out the talking points of Cuomo's record that were most salient. And, we wanted to keep the video dynamic and kind of fast paced. So you're capturing folks' attention and they're looking to see what happens next. And we picked these recognizable, sort of familiar New York City touch points: the corner store, the park, the train, the coffee shop, to deliver this information. And again, I think it goes back to creating content that is playful and fun, but also informative, that makes people want to watch it all the way through and then also share it.
And I also think that it helps that you're a compelling individual on camera and you're creating content regularly and you're doing it as yourself and you're speaking authentically, all of those things. Speaking of that, I want to hear from Kate from Hot Girls from Zohran. Tell us, what is Hot Girls from Zohran, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story because when it first started, it was really just an idea for a t-shirt. I do graphic design and marketing as a job, and I came into the campaign, I'd say like pretty early on, around in February, and I realized there was like this, lack of merch, which was very intentional on their behalf, but there was this need for merch. People wanted something to wear that had Zoran's name on it, and so I designed the t-shirts. And initially, it was just a plan to sell the t-shirts and donate the money to his campaign. And I brought it to our co-founder, Kaif, and we had the idea to put it out. We put the order in, and then the next day, he actually met his fundraising goal and he could not accept any more donations. So at that point, it sort of became a shift of, okay, well, now we have all these t-shirts. What are we going to do with them? We couldn't sell them because of campaign finance law. And so we started giving them out to influencers who we knew to post, raise awareness that way. And then instantly everyone was like, how do I get a t-shirt? How do I get a t-shirt? And so we sort of devised this plan of, we can't sell them, but we can still use them in a strategic way to get people out and actually do direct action. So we started giving them away at canvases, and we would do weekly canvases, and it sort of grew into this big social movement too. We brought in a ton of new volunteers, and it just kept growing from there. And so now we're an affinity group, and we work close with the campaign. We're not, directly connected to them, but we love them and we're happy to be part of it.
Now, can anybody be a hot girl?
Anybody can be a hot girl. Yeah, this is actually something that I love talking about because I feel like there is like this misconception about what Hot Girls for Zoran means. It's not, this idea that it's a group of conventionally attractive people who are voting for Zoran. It's the idea that voting for Zoran is what makes you attractive. It's, attractive to care about your community and care about people around you. It's attractive to be into progressive politics. And so something, I think that the right is really effective at is marketing their movement. So like not only making it accessible, but it's pervasive in the culture. You see it with like Joe Rogan, you see the red hat and these creation of like these very simple slogans. And so I think that something that the left needs to do is match that energy and figure out a way to immerse ourselves into the culture in the same way the right has. And so, the slogan when it comes down to the question of why Hot Girls for Zohran, the simple answer is that it's good marketing and it works. But the larger answer is that we're trying to not only make voting for Zohran happen, but make it something that is like an attractive trait in somebody and
Now,
progressive
how did you
politics as a whole. Oh, go
and
ahead.
how do you, so you actually, what was the path that a volunteer would take between seeing one of your social posts and getting involved?
Yeah, so I think we directly took the social momentum and drove it into live events. So that's something that I'm familiar with. I work in production. I do comedy shows and I do music.
Mm.
And so we found this opportunity to sort of get people out and then educate them on ranked choice voting. So the very first event we did was called Ranked Choice. It was a comedy show at Littlefield in Brooklyn. The only night that we could get on that short notice was a Tuesday. So we were running around like really nervous, like who's going to come out to a comedy show on a Tuesday? And we ended up selling it out. And that was really like the first moment for us where we were like, oh, people will come we give them places to be and places to gather and like communities to surround themselves with, the people will come. And so getting people involved in volunteering was really about taking that online momentum and giving people a space where they could not only, enjoy some entertainment or have sort of this social gathering and party aspect to it, but also use that as an opportunity to educate them on ranked choice voting, educate them on the election, and give them opportunities where they could get directly involved outside of that one event that they came to.
Yeah, and you had some thoughts about having people like canvassing, like not wearing shirts. Like, I mean, wearing shirts,
Yes.
but not wearing your
Yeah.
shirts.
Yeah. I say this to all of our volunteers and all of our canvas leads. I tell them we want you to wear these shirts everywhere except for when you canvas, because there are, these demographics that we're trying to reach. And Hot Girls First are on works because, it's in this online space where we know our audience. But when it's out in the real world, like you don't know whose door you're knocking on. You don't know if you're knocking on somebody who's much older who might not understand, the intention behind the movement. And so we never want to do anything that impedes the success of the campaign. So we tell all of our volunteers, like, wear them out, wear them with your friends. Don't wear them when you're going to knock on doors and you don't know who's going to answer them.
And so I'll say to everybody, like, we all know that field is key and was key for Zohran. And so much of that was built on the work of DSA members going back to the very beginning and community-based organizations like NYCC and JFridge later on, et cetera. But like, as somebody who began door knocking in New York in like 2003, there are some people you will never reach by knocking on their door. Like, that's just, they're either literally never home or they just don't open door for strangers. So like, this sort of visual online canvassing as well was just going to reach people you could not find in other places. I want to pivot to Donald a little bit because the direct to camera videos you guys did were amazing. And, everybody's like, yeah, well, if Zohran was my candidate, I could also have amazing videos because he is a generational talent at being charismatic and a good speaker. But that isn't the only thing that was going on. You did a really amazing job at the Brad Lander and Zohran Mamdani cross endorsement video was like the hottest shit ever. Hold on. Which way are we going? We're going here. We're going here. It was, and you were like trying to get two different kinds of people with two different kinds of vibes and get it together. So talk a bit about how you put that together as a video creator.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you again for having me, and this is an honor to be with the rest of you girls. So, I mean, we're not here without what the rest of you three did. It's such a collective effort by the entire city. It's really beautiful. So yeah, I mean, like, first of all, I mean, I know you said not to say this, but like, working with Zohran is great because like it's very easy to get a good rhythm with him working on camera. Like it's not even just like that he's aware of the camera, but he's such an effective communicator, just broadly speaking. And so is Brad, and it's very different wavelengths in which they're very effective and strong communicators. And this one was a lot of fun because it was such a nice. I wouldn't even say challenge because it came very naturally, but it ended up kind of being a very similar method to all of our working methods, which is like, again, everyone on our team, not just myself, but Debbie Saslaw and Anthony DeMary of Melted Solids, Olivia Becker, and then we're all from a documentary background, and then Andrew Epstein, our comms director and now digital creative director, has like a very wide-ranging background in politics and creative work. And so we all have this very like open-minded, flexible approach to production that has been really fruitful, I think. And this was, I think, one of the ones where it was most of, because we had a strong script that Andrew and I worked on together along with Brad's team. And we knew we knew how the field was going to be. We knew where we wanted to shoot it. But a lot of this rhythm came out of just like letting them both bounce off each other for a bit, watching them just interact organically, and then finding how to play off of that, which I think is like a good testament, I think, to what actually worked in terms of the videos for us, which is like we weren't afraid to experiment really, which was I
Mm.
think something that I feel very, very good about our whole team on.
Something that I asked you about was shooting vertical and shooting horizontal. Talk to me about your decision about how and when to do which.
Yeah, so I come from like a documentary and filmmaking background, and I'm very, as many of us are, a little snobby about vertical video. Lawrence, who I've worked with in the past, can attest that I'll complain about having to do vertical edits sometimes in the past, but it's also the way most people watch video. So I think at a certain point you have to just accept it and see how you can work with what makes that frame special. And there's kind of two ways why I approached it, but in general, I almost always composed for a more horizontal frame, whether it was either the traditional 16:9 frame or for open gate recording, which is basically just using the whole camera sensor, in my case, 4:3. Um, and what I would think about instead is the point of emphasis. And it ends up being this thing where it kind of works out where you can compose horizontally, but vertical can work really well if you think about what in that frame is drawing someone's eye anyway, and just sort of honing in on that for the vertical edit. So, and there's advantages to it you can play into too. Like, for example, in these shots, like in vertical, I was able to get, I think in this one I had a little bit of a goofy inset frame on them because of how it had to fit
Mm-hmm.
in vertical. But in other ones, like, I can get more of Zohran or Brad's body language in the vertical frame than I can in the horizontal, for example. Get more emphasis on that kind of height and space. And another example that you mentioned earlier, when we had our fundraising goal for me, that was when we did that video on the promenade by the BQE,
Mm-hmm.
where he just runs up to the camera and says, "Stop giving us money." We
Yes.
do it. Yeah, that one was another one where I think was a really fun example of how you can kind of play off the strengths of both, because again, I shot it. I shot that one in 4:3 open gate. I thought about the horizontal frame, and like how, like and that way that's important for me because you think about where someone fits in the space of where they are, which is really crucial to our ethos. Is like, not to be like New York's a character in the movie, but we always wanted to make sure he was grounded in the city. That's why we kind of prefer deep focus too. But
Mm.
he's amongst the
Yes.
city. But to that end, when you're thinking about the vertical frame there, it's less like, okay, well, what's the key? And when I was cutting that, I'm like, well, his hands here, for example, and that up and down motion excitement he has in that moment, that's where you can hone in on that. So it's like, I think it's all about working with your own personal eye. So like, what worked for me
Mm.
won't work for everybody, but for me, that's how I come to it.
No, that's fantastic. When other pieces, like there's a saying from Stan Lee and Marvel Comics, which is that you have to write like every issue is somebody's first. And when it comes to social media video, on the one hand, you want to build a narrative where you're taking people on a journey, building them from being unfamiliar with your candidates to either donating or voting or volunteering. But every video might be somebody's first. So how do you balance that? And I'll start with Donald, but I think most of you guys might want to answer that as well.
Yeah, I mean that was I think a challenge. Yeah, again, I'm sure everyone here faced, but for us it was kind of an exciting challenge because it's one we really engaged with very actively throughout the campaign. Which, first of all, so much of the credit here has to go again to Andrew, who as comms director and then creative director, he and I worked together on a lot of scripts, but he was the mastermind behind the larger strategy and a lot of the scripts as well.
Mm.
Really had a very keen sensibility for how to build on policy goals well. And on Zohran himself, who was like such a, first of all, very active participant in our videos, like very, very thoughtful and hands-on, and like very aware of how, again, of what connects with people, talking to them. And I think the structure of a lot of our videos lent itself to hopping in really well. Like, we weren't really winking to our own stuff. We weren't really winking to that much at all. When we referenced something, it was very subtle, for the most part, and it's really about just a directness, not to be too up on the nose there. Like, we by focusing intensely on what we're talking about in a given video, it actually makes it really easy to onboard someone, because his whole policy platform is so immediately and clearly tied back to issues of affordability in the city. So even if someone was seeing our video, like even if the first video someone saw was in May, you know, just by the way we structured it, we always made sure we were hitting that key message of affordability in New York, and that is a right for everybody in New York. Whether it's whether it's freezing the rent for housing, free fast and free buses for bus programs, city-run grocery stores, universal childcare.
Yeah.
All of it ties back to affordability. And even when we were it's more like a event or location-based thing, we made sure that, our messaging connected back to it. And it connected also back to someone who just really loves the city, which thankfully, it's really easy to tell that story because I've never met anyone in my life who loves the city as much as him. So it's
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to respond to that question?
Yeah, but first I actually want to say, because I know Donald, he's always first to give flowers to other people. I just want to say, like, we've already seen, like, there are all the tweets about, oh, this future of how to communicate to voters is vertical video. That's just the solution. And you're seeing the conversation, how Donald approaches it is completely different from how Cuomo's team or Adams' team, or like, what was it? That was at New York shill for like one of the rental boards, doing the similar kind of walk and talk videos. Like, they're not thinking about it this way, right? Donald and his team and the amazing people there are thinking about what the format and the entire creative approach so much more dynamically, in a way that is beyond just like, it's a vertical video. It's not about vertical video, as Donald just said. So I just want to give a shout out again to Donald. Again, like, his vision and his craft is something completely different than anyone else is putting out there. So my background is in advertising, and one of the first things you're drilled into in advertising is you don't know when people will encounter your content, your advertising, your story, or your narrative. So the approach is like, everything has to both be its own object as well as something tied into the overall world, right? The traditional way of thinking about it is the marketing funnel, right? You find out which touch points people will enter the funnel in, and then they'll hit another touch point, until eventually they go down the funnel towards the call to action, right? And that's how something we definitely did with all of our strategy, whether it was based in the real world with like our merch or social media. We didn't think about them as actually separate parts, but rather just different channels all tied into the same funnel. An idea was always, whenever you reach one thing, you would be led into a pathway eventually, somehow, into the next pathway, next touch point, to go down that pathway to ultimately learn more about why Andrew Cuomo sucks, how to stop him, and then who else to vote for, and how ranked choice voting worked, right? So, like one pathway we know people had was like, you see a T-shirt, they go, okay, what is this thing? They saw the slogan, they saw on the sleeve, the Dream logo. They might then go, okay, I'll type Dream into the Google, and I will look into that and go, great, okay, now I will find out more about, I'll go to your Twitter or your Instagram or your Blue Sky, and then start watching your content, or go to your website. And actually, one of the big things, actually kind of like a part of the strategy that worked, was because we sold T-shirts first, it got the eye of a lot of publications, and it got us an interview with Fox 5, not Fox News, but Fox 5, the local channel, which then led to them not just showing our T-shirt, but also showing our website, which is how it drove a lot of people to go to our website. And that led them people into, again, the funnel. So I think the main lesson from us, and we would pass it on to everybody, is think about content not as, but neither as its own thing alone, but also not as part of a universe, like Marvel Cinematic Universe, assuming people come into it and going, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is, but rather a combination of both things. It has to both be self-contained and yet also tie into everything else, so that once they get into it, they go, okay, I see the overall connections, I see how it connects, and I want to get engaged more. I want to see all those things so I can become more involved, to ultimately lead towards the actions that we want them to take.
Carla, I think this is yours, but maybe I'm wrong. The Hey Grandma, Can We Talk About the Election series?
That's the We Grew Here group. So that wasn't something that I was involved in.
One of the things that I really liked was this educational series that was aimed at preaching to the converted, to educate them and give them tools on how to talk to a more challenging audience who might not actually be on the platform where they're being reached at, and who also might need a different message. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on in that
Yeah,
particular
actually,
series?
I will talk a little bit about this series because I know, and Carl actually can talk about it, not just in this context, but also a broader context because she's been doing such great content. I mean, the video about this, talking to specifically Black New Yorkers and their issues. But this is actually a fun thing. Again, this is actually part of the whole digital content creator like connection thing. Shanae, who helps run the We Grew Here, started it, was part of a group of people we met as part of doing outreach to specifically Black New Yorkers, Black Native New Yorkers, to kind of reach and talk to their parents, their elders, and their community. And she's actually part of a chat we had with Carla and a few other Black and Native New Yorker content creators and influencers, which helped, I think, spawn a lot of like these efforts and like create like a brainstorm that led into flowered into a bunch of different things. Which also, again, kind of goes to a larger point of view, which is don't be afraid of just seeing what happens, right? Just like create the space for people to engage, and then it will create a billion things you can never plan for, but it will actually ultimately create the benefit the effort. And that was what Shanae did with the We Grew Here group. But yeah, this was a great example of they really wanted to talk to people that other groups wouldn't be able to talk to as organically. And that was led to, hey, let's create some content around content and also literally field efforts around how do we talk to everyday New Yorkers in our communities and Black Native communities in the outer boroughs especially, and how to talk to kids who we knew were pro Zohran, but having talked to their elders to say, hey, at least this is a group that Cuomo was polled as overwhelmingly winning, and he did in fact win in the primary, but not as substantial numbers as you thought he would have. I think we probably we owe Shanae and we owe all these different groups who have spawned organically as part of this. But I think Carlos can speak directly to the content we created around Black New Yorkers that she did when the Bed-Stuy. That was great and really kind of was part of the strategy as well.
Yeah, and adding to that, one thing that really surprised me is how broad of an audience you can actually engage with on social media in terms of age and generation. I think we tend to think that with platforms like TikTok and Instagram, it's solely used by millennials and Gen Z, but I do think that's a bit outdated. Now, obviously, we're overrepresented on those platforms and most active, but I do think increasingly we're seeing older generations be more active in those places. And I saw that reflected in my comment sections and my DMs, and just like anecdotally, like my parents, my aunties will send me reels and TikToks now. So I'm like, okay, you guys have made it over here. But I think in addition to that, content created on these platforms also can reach older folks kind of indirectly. So you'll have younger family members who will take the content, download it, and send it in the family group chat. I had quite a few people tell me, that the videos that I've done with Dream or other videos have, made it into the family group chats. And it's really cool to see how that helps to foster this like intergenerational dialogue, and that the content that is created on these platforms can kind of be, their life can be extended and the impacts of them can be reverberated off the platform. And I think, obviously with this election cycle, kind of like Lawrence was beginning to speak to, Cuomo had an advantage with older voters, particularly older Black voters, and being able to reach them and begin chipping away at that support was key. But yeah, that was the Dream team and I, we did a collaboration where we went into Bed-Stuy, which is a, historically Black neighborhood here in Brooklyn, and did kind of man on the street style interviews where we were engaging Black voters just as a way to be able to reach voters who are traditionally overlooked, and also to reach the community that we know, where there was perhaps more support for Cuomo, and begin to have those conversations. And it felt good to get into the community and have those one-on-one dialogues, because ultimately campaigns are won by hundreds of thousands of dialogues happening. So being able to engage voters in that way, I think, was really impactful.
And you sat down with all of the candidates through the campaign. Well, not Cuomo, but all basically everybody else.
Most of them, yeah. I mean, I'm a one-woman show over here, so resources, I wish I had more resources to do more. But yeah, it was important to me to sit down with the candidates. I think especially given the fact that we use ranked choice voting in our, primary and special elections here in New York City. And strategically, it was important for folks to utilize all of their slots. So we get 5 slots that we can rank candidates in as a means of blocking Cuomo from getting to the top and pulling out a W. And so I felt that there was value in introducing these folks' platforms to people so that when they're figuring out how they're going to fill out their ballots, they can figure out who's most aligned with them. And obviously as well, like we saw that. So ranked choice voting is fairly new for us. It's still a new system for us. This is only the second mayoral election cycle that we've used it. And so there was a lot of confusion, I think, around the program. Whereas in 2021, there was a really robust educational campaign informing voters about it. This year, there wasn't so much of that. And so I think it kind of fell on, content creators to sort of initiate these independent campaigns informing voters about ranked choice voting and understanding the strategy behind it. And I think that in combination with the candidates eventually embracing ranked choice voting and cross-endorsing, I think it was like a massive group project that was pretty effective. When we look at the data, more New Yorkers use ranked choice voting this cycle than they did in 2021. So I think we were able to reach New Yorkers, and, for lack of a more artful way of saying this, New Yorkers understood the assignment.
Yes. Something that I noticed just running the JFridge social media stuff was that early on in the campaign, whenever we'd post anything with a candidate who wasn't Zohran, because, we endorsed a slate of people, we would get comments where people would say, only vote for Zohran, don't vote for anybody else. And they would say things like that. And then over time, sorry, I'm trying to, okay, let me add this screen back. Here we go. And over time, and I really do have a correlation between a couple of specific educational videos, we stopped getting people saying only vote for Zohran or only vote for this or only vote for that. So one of the videos that JFridge did used pouring Manischewitz wine, this is culturally significant for Jewish people, to show like how ranked choice voting worked. You did a video that was on ranking different Kendrick Lamar albums. Like I saw such a, I didn't actually, here we go. I saw such a decrease in the number of angry comments from confused people, like over a very rapid period of time. Like, how did you think about that?
Yeah, it's so funny. That's exactly my experience with it as well. I've had many kind of group chat conversations about the comments section where at any time you posted anything that wasn't Zohran specific, everyone was like, well, I'm only voting for Zohran. And it's like, I love the energy and I'm right there with you. However, to be strategic and to make the most use of the system, we should be using all of our slots. And I think it was important for me to try to emphasize and convey over and over again that, yes, have your favorite, do everything you can to support him, rank him number 1, and also let's leverage this ranked choice voting system strategically and make use of those other slots. And I think it wasn't a coordinated effort, but I think many of us started posting our ranked choice voting explainers around the same time. And it is crazy. It was night and day. It's almost like one day, comment section filled with all the people, I'm only voting for Zohran. Then we put out this round of, ranked choice voting explainers, and then it kind of stopped almost immediately. It was kind of incredible, but it goes to show you the power of social media and how you're able to reach people and, communicate things to people through social video.
And I'll say to people watching this, you're probably like, well, we don't have ranked choice voting where I live, so why does this matter to me? It's not that. I want you to think about what is a nerdy ballot referendum in your state? What is a policy proposal that you're pushing that requires long explanation? Like for people in nonprofit land, like this is something to pay attention to, because explaining ranked choice voting is complicated and nerdy. And like we had to think about visual ways to break it out for people. So these are lessons for you, not just for people in places that have ranked choice. I want to ask hot girls, Kate, what was the lookalike contest, the Zohran lookalike contest?
Yes, that is a funny story. So it actually came from a friend who had a friend who looked like Zoran, and they were like, "Oh, if there's a Zoran lookalike contest, like you would win it." And so, we've seen these viral lookalike contests, like most notably the Timothy Chalamet one, and we had the idea, like so much of what we do is creating these opportunities for like viral moments or like creating awareness and like meshing that with live events. And so we had decided we were going to do the idea. I had to go through getting a park permit. It was like my first time ever doing something like that. And we set it up and it was honestly, like, really incredible because I reached out to Anthony Poe, who is the creator of the Timothy Chalamet contest. Like, he did the
Mm.
first ever lookalike contest in New York, 10,000 people showed up, and it was sort of a long shot when I reached out to him because we had a couple of mutuals, but I was like, I don't think he's gonna see it." And he got back to me, and he was so excited. I saw that he followed Zoran, and we had a conversation about it, and he was like, I've been reached out to by so many like private organizations who are offering me money to do a lookalike contest. There's been like celebrities who want me to do a lookalike contest for them. And I've said no to every single one, but I'm going to say yes to this because it's important. And it's something that, he felt very passionately about Zoran and about this campaign. And so I think that that was really powerful for me from a standpoint of seeing like there are so many influencers and people out there who are willing to use their voice and use their platform if you just talk to them and give them the opportunity and the space and the resources to do so. Um, and so we set it up. We had, I think, 16 or 17 lookalikes come out. We
Mm.
also, something that not a lot of people know about is we strategically placed this event the day before the voter registration deadline, and we had people there registering
Oh,
people to vote. So it was not only an event where like we wanted people to come out and post about it and make it go viral, we also wanted to register people to vote there. And so we had people collecting the registration forms and going off and submitting them in time to meet the deadline. We had a ton of our volunteers print out these flyers and put them all up in their neighborhoods so it would gain traction. And it was really incredible. We invited a couple of
wow.
content creators. Cassie Wilson was like the main one who came and covered it. And that was really how it gained that traction.
Well, something else is I heard there was a Tim Walz lookalike that was done in Philadelphia, right?
Was
Like I don't want people to think that you need to have this extremely handsome candidate for this to work. I,
definitely.
I like
I will,
I don't
yeah.
know. I know of the Tim Walz, but I don't know if anything else. If you have thoughts about that part of it or
Yeah, I
like
think
how do you
that I think it was especially effective for Zoran because, there were all of these jokes in our volunteer chat of like, "Oh, I'm gonna find my husband here." Like, I'm going to find like, there was this joke like, "Oh, Kate, you're not running a lookalike contest, you're running a dating event. Like, people are gonna find their boyfriend." And so I think that there was this sort of that made it, I think, a little bit extra successful was there was this like already sort of a desire behind like how Zoran looks, and so people were excited to come meet more people who look like Zoran. But I also think that it's something that like it's not it doesn't rely on just Zoran. Like it relies on basically the cultural importance of it. And so I think when you have someone
Mm.
like Tim Walz, who it's like he's culturally important to that specific area, you will have people come out. You will be able, especially like if you have that demographic already there, I think you'll be able to get people out to it. But also like, this is just one event of so many that you can fit and tweak to be very specific to your case and your cause.
Thank you. So I have a question I want to ask each person here and also folks who are watching, like you can put Q&As in the Q&A and I'll put them up and get questions answered. What is something that you learned working on this campaign that surprised you that you think people who are working on campaigns or nonprofits, elsewhere should know? Donald, I'll start with you because I warned you about that one.
Oh yeah, no pressure. It's first before I answer, I just want to say, read the lookalike contest that as soon as I watched that video when it came out and I saw the guy who won, I was like, that's him, that's the guy. And I saw Kara a couple days after that contest, and like we could not both stop gushing about how good he was and how good they all were, but like that he was okay. But to the actual question, um, so I felt I felt like the biggest thing, and it wasn't even I wasn't saying I learned it. I mean, I learned a lot. I'm not trying to be like, "Oh, I didn't learn anything." But, for me, what really felt powerful is it felt like an affirmation. This is something Lawrence, since Lawrence, you gave me praise, or I'm going to shower you with praise. That something Lawrence, I think, exceptionally is really good at. But I think this campaign for both us and for everybody affirmed is that speaking to your audience with respect and clarity works. You don't have to play dirty. You don't have to manipulate. You don't have to deceive. You don't have to play. You don't have to dumb it down for anyone. You can talk to people at their level directly, and it will reach them. And that, like, seeing it work so resoundingly well in this way was so affirming in a way that it's still on hard days. I remember that, no, you can reach people, and it's getting an example of that with such resounding clarity has been a great beacon of hope for me personally. But in a more granular level, I also think that people are really, in a similar note, open-minded about content. Like, I think there's a habit sometimes of people trying, and I guess for speaking to what you said earlier about people sort of riffing on our style, which I won't comment on too much, but what I will say is that the reason we got where we were is we tried something different. It didn't exist in a vacuum. We iterated on a lot of stuff, specifically Debbie and Anthony of Melted Solids, who really pioneered this strategy. But like everyone in general, like, and Jeremy Flood's work with UAW is another big point of influence too. Like, you can work with what people are familiar with to some degree, while not being afraid to try a variation on the formula. And I think that's the thing. If you want to get attention, if you want to stand out, try to find a way to make your authenticity translate. And, like, don't do that by just, like, copying notes. And, like, again, it doesn't sound like learning, but, like, the affirmation of that was just
I predominantly work with nonprofits. I don't really work with candidates anymore. And I know nonprofits will struggle with the question of, like, but we're not an individual, we're an entity. And, like, literally one of my trainings I do on finding organizations' authentic voice is helping organizations build a character sheet a la Dungeons and Dragons for their organization as a heroic figure. Because even though you are a staff of 5 or 500 and you're not like a person who is running for office, you still have a personality, you still have a voice, and you just have to, like, be authentic to that. Lawrence, do you want to, what's your big surprise?
I would say, first I would say, what Donald said. Like, the funny thing actually for us is that we're like, no, we play dirty. I think what was fun is that everyone else was running such a positive campaign. It's so great. And it should be like Zohran and what he was fighting for, the vision of New York, is a positive one. But we were an ultimate hater campaign. That was what we were all about. All we did was hate. We hated Cuomo, and I think that's something that goes back to not only surprise, but I think is, again, something that's about the truth about Donald is about authenticity, is actually talking to your audience about in a way that meets them where they're at. Because I think, something when we did everything about Dream was meeting people where they're at. And this is true of New Yorkers especially, but it's true for everybody. People have real hater energy. And when you channel it correctly, when you tap into it, people will want to get engaged. And I think the thing that for us is important, especially because, again, we didn't have the money. We didn't, Cuomo's team raised 25, or his PAC had $25 million. We know even like some of the pro Zohran PACs, like the best pro Zohran PAC had like $1.3 million. We ultimately raised, I think, around $100,000. So we were not able to, like, run TV ads. We barely able to run meta ads. But what we did know how to do was meet people where they're at. And I think the most important thing is, like, know your audience, meet people where they're at. We knew people wanted to hate. We had to give them a good target, and once you give them everything they know, and actually not even really what they, like, educate people. We need to meet people, remind them how shitty Cuomo was and how shitty the people behind him who are funding him were, and that people naturally said, "Oh yeah, fuck those guys. We're ready to get that energy going." And then I think the most important thing for us was just giving people the tools and empowering them to do it themselves. I think ultimately was what we knew when we knew we were successful wasn't any actually our own videos. Like, it was great to see all that engagement and the shares, and also seeing it people offline engaging and, like, telling us, "Oh yeah, I saw this in the group chat." As Carla said, like, that was actually a very important part of our strategy was getting to the group chats. But actually the moment we knew we were successful was when I was organically just trawling, social media, TikTok, mostly, and Instagram, and then seeing people we had not contacted, people who were honestly had very small follower counts, sharing our messaging, sharing "Don't rank Cuomo," rank your 5. they're doing that organically without reaching out to them directly, that to me was success, because it meant that we were reaching people where they're at and that people were organically taking up the message. That to us is the most important thing, is creating the kind of content and tools that empowers people then become the protagonists of their own story, the protagonists in their own narrative. I think that's ultimately, the politics we all share is turning people into protagonists, that they can own their own political future and become agents of change. And that, I think, is a lesson that I want everyone, watching to take going forward, is don't be afraid to empower people to take your message and run with it. It will probably change your message a little bit or a lot, but the spirit will be true as long as you have a good, strong core and the, ultimately the right action to lead them all towards.
Did anybody ever have to like go behind the scenes to tell somebody like, oh my God, please don't do that? You don't have to tell me what it was, but just like, or did you just let people do their thing and ignore the stuff that you thought was not helpful?
I'd say the only thing was not even like don't do it. It was we had one person who sent us like a story of them with the this is very early on, with like, hey, oh, we bought your shirt, and I can't wait to not rank or to rank Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo last. And we're like, wait, hold on. The story is don't rank, but that was more like, yeah, that's very early on. So it's just a sign to keep educating, to keep getting the message out there. And most people, like, actually, that's a funny thing. We share that story, and organically, people just fill up our comments saying, hey, the ranks. They're like, yep, great. See, people are already learning. They're already doing it. They're already becoming the agents of their own change.
Kate?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing I learned was really that anybody can be an organizer, because I didn't come into this with an organizing background. I came into it as a graphic designer with an idea to make t-shirts. And if you told me 6 months ago I would be spending all of my summer weekends developing a structure to organize 400 people, I would have called you insane. But I think that, we had put out a call for volunteers and 120 people signed up. And that was really when Kaif and I were like, whether or not we're ready to be organizers, we have to be. There's people who are relying on us. There's people who are trusting us with their time and who believe in, the movement that we're building. And so I think that there's a lot of people who maybe want to start things like this, start movements, start organizations, but feel like they don't have the background or they don't have the experience. But I don't think that you need that, because I think that there's so many resources. And I think for me, it might be a little bit easier to say because I do have a background in marketing and in event production, but so many people have these unique skill sets that are applicable to organizing, and maybe they just don't understand how it fits into that yet. But there's so many resources, and there's these communities that you can organize with. Lawrence was one of the very first people that I called when I started Hot Girls for Zohran, and we were doing our event. And I had originally called him because I was like, we would love to have some of your stickers at our event. And it turned into sort of this relationship where I called Lawrence every time I was like, hey, how do I do this? So I think there's so many opportunities to get involved and become an organizer even without that background. And you will make mistakes and you will learn from them and you'll grow. But it's not something that you don't have to directly identify as an organizer to start something like this.
Carla, and then we'll take questions because I got some good ones in here. Carla?
I mean, I did kind of touch on this earlier, but I think the biggest surprise for me was just that you shouldn't sleep on social media as a tool to be able to reach older voters. That was something from the very beginning, and I talked about this at length with Lawrence. I was like, I'm concerned about older Black voters specifically, like how are we going to reach them? And it's funny, I remember at the beginning of the cycle, one of my friends owns a restaurant here in Bed-Stuy, and I met with him, and he mentioned in passing, he's like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of voting for Cuomo. And I was trying to engage him a little bit, but he was kind of pulled in multiple directions. And then a couple months later, I went back to his restaurant, and he was like, I saw your video with Zohran, your interview with Zohran, and it converted me. And obviously that's just one anecdotal example, but I think when you look at the data of who's on social media, you do see that I think it's like 75% of older folks are now on Instagram. Around 60% now have a TikTok account. So definitely not saying that if you are like narrowly looking to target, older folks, that you should only have a social strategy. But I definitely think that it is useful to be able to use. And then the other thing is just like the thing that was top of mind for me this entire cycle was just like the extremely low voter turnout in 2021. And I was like, I just want to be part of boosting that turnout. And, you know, I think all this like massive group project, again, between the online game, the offline game, we all came together to create this momentum and create this energy, you know, getting folks excited and energized about coming out and voting, and really just being able to convey in a way that is accessible the importance and why folks should turn out. Like there's so many different people who are saying like, oh, well, this election is kind of an outlier because, well, Zohran is this charismatic character. And yes, that is part of it. But I think that part of the success of this entire cycle was being able to communicate to folks the importance of engaging with local level politics. And I do think as long as we keep at this, like we kind of have a roadmap and like we kind of have a plan that can be replicated in the future, that we can continue to see and build upon this energy and excitement from this cycle. So, yeah.
Question from Christopher. I volunteered with the Bowman campaign for a time, and it felt like he had a very similar focus in his campaign on trying to motivate first-time voters. Could you speak a bit about how your approach to the Zohran campaign evolved from your work in that race?
Oh man, which one is going first here? This is tough.
Go
No,
ahead.
you start. No, those are start.
Okay. Oh, God, I sabotaged myself there. So yeah, I mean, like first of all, I think Lawrence is going to be the better answer here because Lawrence was involved with Bowen's campaign longer. But like, I mean, working together with Lawrence on that campaign, like that was so much of the building blocks for at least on my. I can speak to my end of things. Like a lot of the formula was developed there. First of all, you know, Congressman Bowman, one of my favorite people in the world, just a real one. But also like you know, but he has a similar you know, his voice and style is different, but it's very similar authenticity and clarity in speaking to people, which I think was something that we both immediately realized was something we could work very strongly with. And I think in terms of like, so in terms of the focus for first-time voters, like there was a lot of, at least you saw, it's partly a left playbook that goes back further to a lot of DSA and progressive campaigns. Just, you know, we know that for that first time and underrepresented voters are going to be very aligned with our policy platform. So it's not like even unique to that, but in terms of the video messaging there, I think similarly to when I said earlier, like, you know, we want to make sure Zohran was like a person who was present in the city at all times. And, you know, because he is, but we wanted to convey that, you know, with Jamal, you know, we wanted to make it seem very, like, again, that he's very present and engaged with his district, with his community, because again, he is. And, but like emphasizing that, finding it, making it feel very active, I think was very key. Because he's both of them are people it's a workout to keep up with them, you know. You know, and both mentally and physically. You know, I haven't had to go to a gym for a while between those two campaigns. But it's you know, that I think is like, it was the building block. But like speaking to experimentation earlier, and again, a huge testament to how no wonder Lawrence was able to mastermind the dream so well. Like, you know, from the comments perspective, you guys were very open-minded for like in trying new things to reach voters, which I think was really inspiring and helped form a lot of that ethos.
And like there wasn't like an equivalent to Dream for a congressional race. It's a different structure. There also Lawrence, thoughts on that one?
Yeah, first I want to say, Christopher, thanks so much for volunteering. Volunteering is what makes everything possible for our side. I think the focus on first-time voters is a shared part of our politics, right? We are all to the left. You know, many of us here are, I'm not going to say all, I'm not going to claim that, but many of us here are socialists. We are DSA members. We think about campaigns from a point of view of activating the unactivated, going past the idea of the traditional voter, the triple prime voter, as in the lingo of electoral, but we're actually reaching people so that they can become protagonists and agents of change within their own communities and within their own society, right? And that was true with the Bowman campaign. I think there's a variety of differences why it didn't work then. I think I will say, I wish as his comms director, we had the budget and really the budget and the, you know, I think the strategic focus So we could have hired Donald much earlier. So he could have had done those kind of videos, because I wanted to do that from the very beginning. Because as Donald said, like Jamal is just a fantastic force of nature who legitimately you could not walk down certain street, like a lot of streets in Westchester, without people literally just stopping their car in the middle of the street and running out and just saying, "Hey, dude, you gotta just say I love you so much." And you're like, "I need a camera. Somebody needs a camera. I gotta record this thing, right?" But I would say this can go kind of learning from that. That was the reason why I started Dream. I wished I had something like Dream when I was, the comms director for Jamal's campaign. I wanted a hater campaign that could go out there and just attack our enemies. The way that they were, APAC was attacking Jamal. We had to play defense and offense the entire time. And that's what really, when we started Dream, we knew that Zohran was running for mayor. And we're like, we wanted, and so like, we needed someone to be the people to attack Cuomo, Eric Adams, the billionaires attacking, that will come out to attack Zohran as they did. And we needed it. We need that thing. And when we realized that no one else was going to step up, we're like, okay, we'll do it, because we are the ones who just faced it. As we, having experienced it ourselves, we knew what was effective against us from APAC's side. So we're going to be the ones doing it against them. And that really was inspiration for doing that, and also our strategy of reaching non-traditional voters, right? We reached out to people who were not your triple prime voters. Why we reached out, and why our first influencers we reached out to were people who are comedians, who are Sports Illustrated models, who are stylists, who are fashion lifestyle gurus. We want to talk to people outside of the traditional political sphere, because that's, to us, similar to like how Zohran was doing that and activating them in the positive way. We wanted to activate them on a negative way against Cuomo, and saying, yeah, this is how a two-way two-prong attack to get people who are outside of the traditional political sphere to become activated political agents.
But do you feel like a nonprofit organization that is working on passing local law 79? I mean, that one passed, but like, let's pretend we're back in the time and we're trying to pass local law 79 about building codes. Like, are influencers going to care and listen to something with that like level of nerdiness basically to it? I mean, this is to everybody,
I would say that Kate and Carla have just kind of said it, within their stuff, exactly that you can turn anybody into, make everything interesting. It's just a lot about the approach and authenticity. I think I'll let them speak more to that, but I think it's definitely possible.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw it with Zohran's campaign. Like, in terms of his platform, like, he had these kind of digestible sound bites that was able to communicate to a non-political, non-triple prime voter audience these complex policy issues and translate it in a way that everyone can understand. Like, at the end of the day, politics impacts us all, and these policies impact us all. So I think just getting down to the root, my light just went out. Getting down to the root of like, what is the impact of this policy? How does it impact the audience that we're trying to reach and engage? And then kind of building something around that. But I think, again, like, I think the sweet spot with a lot of things that are successful is you want to be informative, but you also want it to be engaging. That can be through visuals, that can be through like an interesting way of storytelling, that can be through comedy. And like, I think those two things coexisting at once in one piece of content is what makes it successful.
And our last question is from Leah. I know now there is a lot of attack campaigns being planned and launched against Zohran on behalf of Cuomo, Sliwa, and even Trump. How do you think the campaign can stand strong against these threats and keep up the impact of the positive message Zohran, even in the face of misinformation and negative campaigns against him?
I think that, we've seen that Zohran has sort of won the heart of New York City. He did this long walk from the top of Manhattan all the way down. Donald was there, I was there. And it was really incredible seeing him walk through these neighborhoods, because people would just come up to him, and like, he really was the people's princess. Like, that's how I love referring to him, because he would have these conversations with people. People were so excited, like taking videos, pictures, FaceTiming their friends to show them. So I think, he does have the city behind him. And I think so much of of where that came from was the canvassing. It was knocking on doors. It was people having conversations with their friends and their neighbors. And that's really how we are going to get past, you know, this age of misinformation and all of the conservative stuff that, you know, comes through on the news. And we can't really control the news cycle, but we can control what we do face to face with our neighbors and with our communities. And so I think a lot of what our strategy is, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of the campaign strategy is to continue to strengthen those communities, continue to fight back against misinformation online through social media. But it's really, you know, we have the platform already, so it's just reinforcing what we've done in the primary.
Well, I think we're at time right now. I'm going to just take my mod. I want to thank my panel. You guys are like on the road and at like 5 different conferences. Everyone who's here, I'm going to share slides that are going to link to these videos so that folks can actually see some of these examples for yourself if you haven't watched them yet. And I also am going to do a quick plug. I am leading a panel tomorrow online at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. my time on organizing in pop culture communities. So if you are trying to reach people where they are at, which is talking about the things they love on the internet and also with friends in person, come to this training and we'll talk about some work I did around the recent Star Wars Andor show and like fan organizing in general and principles of how to do it. So thank everybody. Thank you all so much. Thank you again to my panelists. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you again,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Take care.